Hello and welcome to Media Studies. I'm Mr. Raymond. I wonder what drew you personally to the study of media. It is all around us all the time, and therefore we believe that it is a subject whose importance grows more and more with each passing year. Let's begin with an overview of the course. Our course covers many texts, but we always link them to one of 5 key areas of study: media language, or specific details within a text that speak to the audience; representations, which is the way people and groups are artificially portrayed in the media, for good or for bad; audiences is the study of who reads or watches media and why; industry is our crossover with subjects like business or economics, and we look at media as an industrial product or commercial commodity; and finally, contexts is the way media changes over time as the world around us changes. We cover Component 1 in Year 12, particularly the first 2 terms, as we build the ability to read and understand media texts in a more academic way. Section A of the exam covers media language and representation. We study these adverts for representation of gender, for example, or race, and we look at how the context of values presented in media texts has changed over time. Music videos by Dizzy Rascal and Vance Joy are studied for their construction, the media language, and how people are represented. The same applies to these 2 national newspapers, with more of an emphasis on how important issues are portrayed along the lines of political bias. Section B of the exam asks about industry and audience. These 2 films are studied across most of the autumn term, looking at the difference between films made by big studios compared to independent local filmmakers. These adverts appear in both Section A and B, but only for audience aspects. The 2 newspapers also cross over into Section B in both the audience and industry categories. In the spring term, we take a long look at one of the Assassin's Creed video games, which takes us deep into audience theory, while BBC Radio 4's Late Night Woman's Hour allows us to consider the increasingly rare industrial context of public service broadcasting. This is what allows the BBC to be free to air and not carry adverts because it is funded by the TV licence fee. If we pause here, you might be mulling these questions over in your mind. Destinations after studying this subject vary, of course, but the interest gained from studying media has, for many ex-students, been the route into a media-based higher education course, taking aspects of the subject further, and also into the industry itself. Lessons in media are unusually varied because after the academic study for Component 1, we move on to our major coursework practical project, Component 3, and the classroom becomes a completely different place. Initially, student work becomes more focused on research in preparation for deciding on an idea to photograph. Then we move into the most practical part of the course, when students plan photo shoots, write copy for articles and cover lines, and then pull all of this together on the computers to produce their own magazine and web pages. You will learn skills in professional standard Adobe software including Photoshop, InDesign and Premiere. We don't code for our website because the subject is more interested in design and layout. Therefore, our web pages are produced on the easy-to-use commercial platform Wix. We usually begin preparing the second exam paper, Component 2, in the second half of the autumn term of Year 13. We look at 2 comparable television crime series from the UK and Sweden as we consider the global industry of television. In Component 2, we look at fewer texts but study them in more depth, applying all the key concept areas of media language, representations, audience factors, industry and contexts. In this way, we build on the skills learned both academically and practically in Year 12. The remaining texts in Component 2 cover the development of magazines over the last half-century, and then media in the online age, with specific reference to these two websites. We will now look at some of the theory you will begin to encounter on the media course, starting with a way in to examining the unique language used by media texts. All pictures, and especially texts that use combinations of pictures and words, can be said to operate through a range of codes and signs that we as the audience are expected to know. This idea is usually attributed to French writer Roland Barthes, shown here. Particularly useful for us are the symbolic codes. This picture is in black and white. Does that make it look old or sophisticated? Timeless? Or fixed in the jazz club era of the late 1950s? This would probably depend on what the individual audience member brings to the image. At first glance, it shows what a particular named man's face looks like, but other questions should easily arise. Why are the others in the photograph looking the other way? Why is he not looking directly at the camera? What can he see? What does his expression signify? Thoughtfulness? Disinterest? What is the location? Does the cigarette serve a purpose as a prop in the picture? Added to this, we can consider technical codes. The camera angle is eye level. There is a glow of light in the top left of the image, giving shadow to the subject's left-hand side, creating interesting textures to his features. This is the basics of media study, looking in much more detail than you might otherwise do at the construction of an image. This is rarely accidental. Even if the photographer did not plan each element exactly, and a good photographer working in a studio will do, the photo editor picked this image from many others because it had just the right balance of elements. On another level, media theory can take us beyond even what is in the image to the motivations and influences behind a media product. As an example, we might look at one of our set theorists, Paul Gilroy, who speaks about the notion of post-colonialism. This theory can only be understood with a knowledge of colonialism, which was practiced by European countries in particular from the 18th through to the 20th century. The cartoon shown here is an American media text from 1899 suggesting American icon Uncle Sam was following the British John Bull character with his Indo-Chinese British colonies. It was prompted by American annexation of Pacific nations at the time, particularly the Philippines. So, out of respect, I have redacted the image because it is of its time and therefore deeply racist in its depiction of the colonised nations, and adds to this insult by suggesting the purpose of colonisation was to lead the colonised people to a better understanding of civilization, or what Western nations believed to be civilization. That is, the Western nations who, only 15 years after this cartoon was drawn, embarked on the first of two massively destructive and very uncivilized world wars. Thankfully, the European empires of the 19th century were destroyed or dismantled in the 20th century. But Gilroy's theory is that the mindset of white racial superiority and white privilege regrettably lives on after the empires have disappeared. Post, the Latin word for after, attached to colonialism, suggests that either grossly or subtly these ideas are still to be found. Grossly, they have appeared in the killings of people of colour by racially motivated police brutality, called out most recently in the case of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But Gilroy was interested in subtle examples, where texts make an assumption that the primitivism portrayed in the White Man's Burden cartoon is still applied to countries outside Europe, most particularly those that are home to people of colour. On the left, is a picture of downtown Mumbai in India. On the right is a still taken from an advert we are about to watch. Consider how the audience is positioned. This means how the audience is made to feel and to think. Why is this? What elements of the language of media have been used to make us think this way?
Will you give a child the little lift he needs today? Dilip is only 6 years old, but every day is a struggle to survive. He'd love to go to school, but his mum is simply too poor to send him. For Dilip, there is no way out of poverty, unless someone like you could do something incredible. Text LIFT to Oxfam right now. Your text could start Dilip on his journey out of poverty. It could help his mum earn a decent living so she can afford to send him to school and he can follow his dream of becoming a doctor. It's not magic. It's just you giving someone a little lift now. And when one person is lifted, they lift others around them. So text LIFT to 70066 to give just £4 and start lifting someone's life today. Please don't wait. A child needs a little lift now.
As we watch a second time, notice how Dilip is deliberately represented as being left behind. Does this represent a little boy, or does it represent his whole nation? What are the dominant colours here? Beige and brown, some dull green. Notice too how the sky is a dull, cloudy grey colour. Where is this? What is the location? What landmarks are there to inform us? None. On this shot, we see a pained expression on Dilip's face, and we see the background blurred in a focus pull to ensure we notice the code created by the expression. To see Dilip's sandaled feet and the drag on him created by the water container. Then Dilip falls on the words,
He'd love to go to school.
What difference would it make if the voiceover had a strong accent local to Dilip? The gentle, familiar and warm tones of the voiceover artist's mild Scottish accent is carefully chosen to assure the audience that they can make a difference to this particular child's life.
It could help his mum earn a decent living.
Even though the child is also an actor with an agent. The older children turn in sync, despite Dilip falling silently and not calling out.
For Dilip, there is no way out of poverty.
Is this true? How do we know? We can see no civilization anywhere in the location, which helps to reinforce this message.
Unless someone like you could do...
Who? Me? Someone like you? Like who? British people? Does this imply white British people? If you personally are white, then probably yes. The audience is certainly positioned as privileged, as having the means to help. Dilip stands and is seen in a low-angle shot, giving him more power and hope. Has he received a donation? Usually these adverts are aired on daytime TV to an audience of retired people sitting comfortably and, according to research, easily made to feel guilty about their own well-being when presented with images of someone less well off than them.
Could do something incredible.
At which point we see Dilip levitate as a visual metaphor suggesting transformation in his life. The sum of £4 is relatively small in the UK and can apparently achieve not only the miracle of levitation but also the supply of school books and perhaps an entire school. In fact, the advert makers, a group of 6 advertising agencies, describe it as promoting the supply of a cow to the mother, indicated here by her work with a milk churn, which she can use as the start of a business that will pay for Dilip's education. Was that message clear to you? Or did you think that you would be personally responsible for Dilip's progress to becoming a doctor for the price of a Costa?
Your text could start Dilip on his journey out
See
of
how the
poverty.
word journey syncs with Dilip walking, and the music has changed pace. See also how the colours are brighter, indicating hope. Although the school is not in the next village or a nearby built-up area, it is grass-roofed and basic. Dilip is studying with older children, also indicating progress.
It's not magic.
Now, when the children are being lifted, see how blue the sky is. What did you make of the ending? Perhaps, even though the donation of just £4 is enough, there is an apparently limitless supply of post-colonised children with water containers needing £4 more. On the course, you will study an advert for water aid that takes a different approach, although it is set in a very similar location. This kind of charity appeal is rarely set in a location that looks like a European city, like our image of downtown Mumbai, or this image of Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, where the advert is meant to be set. The charity sector uses research which shows that adverts which tug the heartstrings bring in the donations. For an example of this, here are some comments from below the advert on YouTube. Not everyone here wants to donate, but clearly cuteness is a big factor in charitable giving. None of this analysis is to suggest that charitable giving is a bad thing. Herts and Essex has a long-standing partnership with Eden High School in Uganda. In partnership, very specific needs can be addressed. During the coronavirus, staff at Herts and Essex have contributed money specifically towards the salaries of teachers at Eden High when the school was closed by the pandemic. Our analysis of the advert is to question its messaging, not the moral value of charity. Does the advert tell us everything the charity achieves? Does it imply that the £4 donation may in fact help fund the filming of the advert? How much did the voiceover artist make, for example? Or does the messaging lean towards the connotation that white people are so comfortably off that they can easily help poor people of colour? Would the messaging be different if the advert ended with an adult Dilip dressed in medical scrubs meeting a wealthy African-American patient who had once donated to Oxfam? Can you think of other charity adverts that imply the donor is a person of colour? And why shouldn't you be able to? Another theorist, George Gerbner, suggests that if a connotation like black people suffer, white people donate is repeated often enough, it becomes an accepted belief. This is called Gerbner's cultivation theory. The second text that we will look at reverses the idea. Black Panther is an unusual text in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it deliberately addresses real-world political issues. Also, it is a text that deliberately tries not to be post-colonial in its portrayal of the city of Wakanda. Wakanda is a secret civilization that has developed in the heart of Africa, but without the influence of European colonizers. Just as Europe and American civilization benefited from the natural resource of oil, Wakanda has found an even more powerful fuel in a material called vibranium. Wakandans have kept their advanced city and civilization and their remarkable resource of vibranium secret from Western civilization. Until now, when the South African gangster Ulysses Claw has managed to steal some. For copyright reasons, we can only show stills from the clip and subtitles. In class, we watch the real thing. How many opposites to post-colonialism did you spot? The gangster is white, the police are black. The white American does not have the upper hand, even though you will no doubt recognise Martin Freeman as an English actor from films like Nativity. Of course, throughout the clip he thinks he does have the upper hand. His assumptions about Africa are challenged at every point in the script, yet he cannot conceive of Africans being anything other than third world people because of the representations he has cultivated all his life. He is put at a disadvantage and made to appear ignorant by people not speaking his only language. And at every stage, everyone else in the room knows how ill-informed he is. We will see more of this text on the course. I hope this taster has given you a window onto a course that you think you will enjoy.